Right, in a projectile motion, how do we represent now ngithatha object ngiyiphontela phezulu ibuye izela ngirepresenta kanjani ngokwe how do we draw a velocity against time graph? A graph of velocity against time. A graph of velocity against time. Now when you plot a graph, leli gama eliza before against liba ku y-axis, ngalena ba against liba ku x-axis. When you plot a graph, kushuthi muthanda ungathi a graph of y-axis against x-axis. Into ngayixoxa kanjani? Bangangathi against bakwethu. Uma kuthiwa Pirates plays against Kaizer Chiefs. Abangafuni ukuthi against abazazi bayishayela top versus Pirates versus Kaizer Chiefs. Against it means versus. So kungathiwa a graph of velocity versus time. Pirates against Kaizer Chiefs. Pirates versus Kaizer Chiefs. Right. Yaxolisa ukukhuluma ngePirates ngiyabona abanye baphatheka akumnandi. Now, uma uplata igraph ngamanye amazwi wena ku y-axis ngoba uqale ngevelocity, ku y-axis ivelocity, ku x-axis time. I-velocity ikalwa in what? In meter per second. I-time ikalwa in what? In seconds. Right. Now, ake sikhulume, ake ngiyibeke ngale ndlela ngoba phela iyadayisana le graph le. Sidila la nge-vertical projectile motion. Then ike ibe u-negative velocity mesithanda or ube u-positive velocity in meters per second, time in seconds. You throw an object upwards. Let's take upwards as negative, downwards as positive. Let's utilize the very same example that sisebenzisa lapha na. Le example that sibhizi ngayo. When you throw an object upwards, i-velocity esuka ngayo u-60. 60 upwards, which makes it minus 60. Isuka la. From minus 60, ile velocity esuka ngayo. On its way up, the velocity decreases ngokufana, ngoba phela ishintsha ngokufana. Hence we have a straight line graph imi kanje. It decreases ngokufana. Izifike with velocity of 0. La ifika khona. Sibonile ke ukuthi velocity isikhathi 6 seconds. Lana besisebenzisa i-acceleration is 10. Thatha 6 seconds. La isuka khona. So isuka ngevelocity of 60 iya phezulu, meya phezulu, vele phezulu it's minus. So it will be minus 60, minus 50, minus 40, minus 30, minus 20, minus 10 until iba u-0. Iyothi isuka lapho ishintshe direction. Kusho ukuthi manje iyothatha leya axis ye graph, this quadrant graph. Oh, senani la. Iyosuka manje from minus, from 0. From 0 iyothi plus. Sibonile ukuthi ithathe another 6 seconds, which is 12. Shothi la iyofika khona, yila iyofika sehamba ngo-60 meters per second. Isuke ngo-minus 60. Ya-decelerate, the velocity decreased to 0. Yathi isuka lapha, yasuka from 0, ya-accelerate yaze yaba ku-60. So we have something of this nature. This is the graph of velocity against time. If upwards is positive, is negative, downwards is positive. Nanti graph yakho. Let me warn you. Islope sale graph kumele kube into efanayo right through. Right. What does the slope of velocity time graph represent? As stated, the slope of a graph mathematically it's delta y-axis over delta x-axis. Slope of any graph. Slope of a graph, delta y over delta x. Nayenza ka maths ka grade 10 mathematics, shama slopes of graph. Now the slope of this graph, slope of this graph, yini slope of this graph? What is y-axis? It's delta v. Y-axis is velocity over what is x-axis? Delta t. Oh, slope se velocity time graph se representa nina konje yini delta v over delta t. Acceleration awusakhumbula delta v, change in velocity meters per second, change in time second. So meters per second, it will be meters per second squared. So the slope of a velocity time represents acceleration. Oh, now, ngoba the acceleration yala is the same, is constant. Lana 7 to 10 meters per second squared. Kota gini na 9.8. Acceleration is 10. Ile velocity enciphe ngayo inciphe ngo-10 yanda futhi ngo-10. So the slope of the graph is the same. So we have slope. So ngamanye amazwi, the slope of velocity time graph represents acceleration. Islope bakwethu usizwa yini kwi-slope na? Usizwa ama-units. Ama-units ukuthi yini? So we have velocity against time. Ama units a velocity, time, satellite meters per second, which represent the slope, what is the slope of this graph? It's acceleration. Nansi indlela wrong yokudweba le graph. Indlela wrong. Wrong. Umuntu athi minus 60 at velocity in meters per second at a time in seconds. Buki slope sakhona asiqale kahle ayisijabule size sishaye izandla abuye lapho athi ora mhlambe abuye athi hayi bakwethu uzama ukuthi uyabona le slope asafani nani kusho ukuthi acceleration iwa ayifani ne-acceleration inyuka. Islope sakho kumele sibe straight line to show that the acceleration iya phezulu ilingana ne-acceleration iya phansi. So be careful of how you draw the graph. Right, siqhubeka futhi ngalama graphs bawethu. Ngingasho nje ngingakutshela ukuthi unomuphi umbuzo lapho ukhona. Ngingapolofeta nje ngikutshela ukuthi mina unamuphi umbuzo lapho ukhona. Ake ngipolofeteke. Umbuzo onawo manje to say, what if upwards is positive, downwards is negative? Yeah. Lana islope se velocity times sima kanje. Ngoba upwards is negative. Iqala from 60 yaya phezulu negative. Yancipha velocity yaze ba u0 ila ijika khona. Yathi isuka ke yaya phansi. Right. Lana yaya phansi. Ungathuswa kubona igraph ikhuphuka nje. This is the sign ekhombisa lana no positive ngale. So don't ever confuse igraph ne direction of motion. Umuntu uyangizwa ukuthi ngithe iyehlile la ebeya phezulu bese uthi ngoba igraph yaphezulu kusho le object yaphezulu lana iphezulu lu negative, so isuke vele ngo60 isa yaphezulu, so ekukhuphukeni kwa ivelocity yancipha yaba u0 la ijika khona. Teme ijika lapha naphezulu yaphansi ke ekuyeni kwayo phansi ivelocity now yaba siba positive. So ke sinento nje. Right, now ake sijikeke lempahla sithi velocity in meters per second, time in seconds. Manje isuka nge-velocity of 60 kodwa iya phezulu. Injani isayini ya phezulu? Positive. Le graph isasho le graph isasho isimo esifanayo nale graph. Umehluko ukuthi sikhethe ukuya phezulu la as positive, ukuya phezulu la as negative, ukuya phansi la as negative, ukuya phansi la as positive. Kodwa isimo siyafana. So isuka nge-velocity of 60 ithi ngiyenze kahle la, ithi ngithi velocity ngibhale la in meters per second. Isuka nge-velocity of 60 u60 no, positive 60 because upwards is positive. Ngale nkathi isuka iya phezulu nje ivelocity yancipha la iya phezulu izifike ku velocity of 0 nje na emva kwesikhathi esingakanani 6 seconds. Lana ngoba phezulu is minus isuka la iya la 6 seconds. Lana ngoba phezulu is positive isuka la iya la 6 seconds. Bese kwase kwenzeka iyasisuka ke bakwethu iyasuka yaya phansi, iya phansi izifike ku velocity ka 6 light la esandleni laphana iyoba mina minus 60 ngoba emva kwesikhathi esingakanani 12. U6 seconds kuya phezulu, u6 seconds kuya phansi, so the total time is 12. njengana. Yayibuka ke le graph lena. Le graph isasho into efanayo. Ngeke ngiyithanda ukuthi uyazi uma uyibuka lento yabona ukuthi ime kanjani. Uma uyithatha ngamehlo engqondo wena owenza i-drawing wena we-EGD uma uthatha le part uyisa phezulu lena ngale nkathi uyithi lezo zaphansi lezo phezulu ube yile graph uthatha uyithi ngaphansi uthi pheqe ukuthi pheqe lokhu ngaphansi kuya ngapha kuphuma into nje khabe ha uma uthatha le uyithi pheqe lokhu pheqe kuphuma into nje umehluko la i-direction bakwethu but the situation is the same. Isuke nge-velocity of 60 yafika la isuke khona nge-velocity of 60 kwayithatha 12 seconds. Nalana isuke nge-velocity of 60 yafika la ifika khona nge-velocity of 60 la isuka khona kwayithatha 12 seconds. Umehluko ukuthi i-sign yakhona ime kanjani. So sinento nje. Right. Now this is the velocity time graph. Kuyenzeka kwa exam bakwethu ake ngisule ngizoyixoxa ke. Ngikhuluma ngama graphs e-projectile motion. Ama-calculations siyaza kuwona, ungangijaha. Ngoba nami bese ngikujaha ngeke usathanda. Yokujaha ngama-question uyozuthi malutshu. Ngiphezu kwakho nje ngama-question. Angidlali. Ngiyajahana mina. Ungangiboni ngingaka ukuthi angijahani. Uyosuka ngespeed mina ngigijima mina ngine stamina ngiyigijimela nje same pace gijima uzukhathala nokubamba sokhathela. Yeah. Now ake sibheke ama graphs. Nangu umuntu uphonsa i-object asikhulume nge-tennis ball. Uyalidedela leli tennis iyayizwa lapho ngikhuluma into. Uyalidedela liyehle lishaye phansi. Abangisi bathi bounces. Lishaye phansi ake ngithi ukushayisana kwawo nomhlaba ku such that uma lifike phansi nge-velocity of 30 liyokhuphuka lisuke nge-velocity of 30 futhi liya phezulu lize lifike la lifike at the same height. Tennis ball uyisusa from 0 uyayidedela, it bounces on the floor and come back to where it started. But awusidwebele i-velocity time graph. Once you release a tennis ball and it bounces on the floor and come back to where it started. What is the velocity time graph yakho? Ngenzela ukuthi ukwazi ukuyizwa. A tennis ball is released from a certain height and bounces on the floor upon release. Assuming, that it reaches the same height, assuming that it reaches the same height as the one from which it was released. Draw the velocity time graph of the above experiment. Ignore the effects of friction. Ignore the effects of friction. Now, nansi equation sengibhalile la ibhodi. A tennis ball is released from a certain height and bounces on the floor upon release. Shaya pants, yabuyela. Assuming that it reaches the same height as the one from which it was released. Sugala, waitetela shayala, yabuyela yafigala. Draw the velocity time graph of the above experiment. Ignore the effects of friction. Manje bakune friction, bakuno moya, akesithi kuno moya, ashayisa ungazathi akukho konke lokho. So we have to draw a velocity time graph. Now, velocity time graph. Be careful of this situation. Velocity time. So we have velocity in meters per second. Given the time in seconds. Velocity in meters per second. Given the time in seconds. Now what we have is release. Initial velocity is 0. Let's take upwards as negative, but take upwards as negative. Take upwards as negative. Now it's released, so initial velocity is 0. Now mere pants downwards is positive, which means the velocities will soar from 0 inyuke until it bounces the shaya umhlabathi. Ishaya umhlabathi njena ngale velocity enkulu efike ngayo phansi. Hey, lalela ke ngixoxela indaba. Indaba manje isiphakathi kwayo nomhlabathi. Ngale nkathi ishaya umhlabathi. Sesi apply Newton's third law of motion. When you exert a force on an object, why? Newton's third law. Itiona. For every action, there is equal and opposite reaction. Whatever the tennis ball does on the floor now will do equal and opposite force on the tennis ball. So sithe njengoba kunjalo ake nithi ifike ngevelocity ngiyafanisela nje, let's say plus 45 ukuze ikwazi ukureach the same height, ize ikwaze ukureach the same height ngoba izosuka ngo45 ukuya phezulu. Why 45 ukuya phezulu? Ungakhohlwa phela ukuncipha kwevelocity kulingana ukwanda kwevelocity yaphansi kuzolingana nokuncipha kwevelocity yaphezulu ngoba i-gravitational acceleration is the same. So ke sesilindele ukuthi iyovesene isuke ngevelocity of minus 45 minus ngamanye amazwi into enzeka laphana ithi mayishaya umhlabathi ivelocity yakhona ishintshe ngokuphazima kweso, ishintshe from 45 iyehle izibe u0, izoshintsha from 45 iyehle izibe u0, ishintshe isuke la sekingakanani na soku45. So lesimo lesi siyenzeka ngokuphazima kweso. Where manje ingabisaya phansi manje seyojika manje iye phezulu, iswa yini phezulu na ingoba umhlabathi manje seyi-exerta i-force upwards. Bese i-accelerator bese i-decelerator isuka from 45 ize ibe ngakanani na, ize ibuyele to the same height, which is how much, which is until it reaches the velocity of 0. Uyitetelile iyaya phansi, iyashaya, iyabuya, iyafika kwi-velocity of 0. Uyitetelile iyaya phansi, iyashaya, okwenzekela kwenzeka seyishintsha from a negative iya to the same velocity but iya upwards, isuka from minus bese iba yilolu hlobo. Lena i-graph of a velocity time graph of a bouncing ball. That is the velocity time graph of a bouncing ball. Obviously, sesibonile laphana, what if upwards is positive? If upwards is positive, bakwethu uzoyithi phaq lena izoba ngaphansi. If upwards is positive, uzoba nento nje izothi bese uthi bese ithi if upwards is positive minus 45 ishintshe ithe plus 45 bese iya phezulu njena ivelocity kuyeni kwa iphezulu velocity yancipha izibe u0. We can have something of this nature. Right.